They are both in a relationship, but I want it
for myself.
Can you help me, Achi?
I thought you are in a relationship with my friend Adanne.
I never really loved Adanne.
I just wanted to use her as a medium to get to you.
She was the bait for the bigger fish.
In the village of Umuche, there were two families, the family of Mr. Iheanacho and Mr. Ifedish. These two families had a daughter each among their many sons. And due to the closeness of these families, their only two daughters, Adanne and Adaku, became very close friends. Indeed, the best of friends. Adanne and Adaku were very beautiful and intelligent young girls. Though Adanne was slightly prettier than Adaku, they had many things in common. They were both good cooks, hunters, and dancers. This made their friendship even stronger, as they always had a lot of things to do together in their leisure time. They had been friends since childhood and had been together for over 15 years. The strength of their friendship and bond was well known throughout the entire Umuche village. Parents would tell their children to form friendships like the one between Adanne and Adaku. Girls would tell their peers that they wanted to be friends with Adanne and Adaku, and parents would say, "Look at you, Neka. See how you and your friend are always quarreling and making noise in the entire compound. Don't you see how Adanne and Adaku are? Do you ever see them barking at each other like this? Try to be like them." When Adanne and Adaku passed through the marketplace, they would always hold each other's hands, staring at each other with admiration and laughing heartily at each other's jokes, much to the delight of all who beheld them. The market women would say among themselves, "See how happy these two are with each other. I hope my Neka can find a friend who will make her this happy, not that stupid Nkechi." Each had their own share of praises for Adanne and Adaku's friendship. One day, when Adanne and Adaku were passing through the market, chatting and laughing as usual, Adaku felt very pressed. She needed a spot to urinate, and when she told her friend Adanne, they began combing through the busy market looking for a good spot for Adaku. Finally, they found a large oak tree behind the market, and Adaku decided to urinate behind the tree while Adanne would stand and watch from a nearby distance. As Adaku was urinating, Adanne spotted one of the largest branches of the oak tree about to fall, and it was directly above the spot where her friend was. She shouted, "Adaku, watch out. Shift out from that spot. A huge tree branch is about to fall on you." Adanne shouted anxiously to Adaku, who remained in the same spot, urinating. "But Adanne, I'm almost done now," Adaku said adamantly. Adanne knew how stubborn her friend could be at times. She also knew how fragile her friend was, and if the branch fell on her, it might actually be her end. So before Adaku could even finish her statement, Adanne had already leaped to the spot where she was and pushed her out. She had successfully saved her friend, but just as she was about to save herself, it was already too late, as the branch immediately fell on her, injuring her on the left side of her face, which ended up with a big permanent scar on her left cheek. The incident, however, did not weaken the bond between Adanne and Adaku. The scar did not make Adanne or any of her family members resent Adaku, nor did it make her any less beautiful, as she was already a charming beauty on her own, with or without the mark. 2 months later, Adanne's mother sent her to the village stream to fetch water for their daily activities at home. As Adanne was carrying her pot on her head on her way to the stream, she met an opulently dressed, handsome, middle-aged man who greeted her warmly, causing her to stop. "Good day, beautiful lady," the richly dressed man said to her. Adanne stopped and turned around. She studied the man a bit before replying, "Good morning, sir. I'm sorry, I don't know you. You greet me as if you know who I am." The man replied with a smile, "Oh, my apologies. Sorry for the lack of introduction. I am Afika, a trader. I sell batik wares across the market," he said, still smiling. "Oh, that's very nice," said Adanne thoughtfully. "I am Adanne, but my friends and family members call me Ada for short. So you can call me that as it is easier to pronounce." She and Afika had a little conversation, but then Adanne had to excuse herself to fetch the water her mother had sent her for. "I have to be leaving. My mother will be waiting for me by now. It was such a pleasure knowing you. By the way," said the delighted Adanne. The man responded with a smile, and then asked if they could meet at that spot again, which Adanne readily agreed to before she left after bidding him farewell. Adanne came the next day, as she had promised. She and Afika continued meeting up for days, weeks, and even months. Their bond grew stronger and stronger, and soon, they were in a relationship. Adaku had once heard Adanne talking about her wealthy trader lover, Afika. Adanne had told her about it occasionally, and Adaku was anything but happy about it. She couldn't believe that Adanne would get a lover before her, much less a very rich man, given that her own face was still intact and not scarred like Adanne's. Adaku knew Afika very well and the kind of designs he sold. They weren't clothes for small children. He was a very wealthy man in their land. In fact, one of the richest cloth dealers in the entire Umuche land. I wonder what he even sees in her, Adaku thought to herself. Of all the maidens in this land, is it someone with a very big mark on her face that he chose? The charm she used on him must be really strong. Adanne had also noticed some very strange new behaviors and attitudes in her friend after she had told her about her relationship with Afika. Adaku would easily get irritated and annoyed by virtually anything and everything Adanne said, and would shout at her at every slight provocation, which was very unlike her. She would also refuse to go to some places with Adanne. "Don't bother about following me, Adanne. I can go on my own," Adaku would frequently say. Adanne found it very strange, as she and Adaku had always gone everywhere together, but she always respected her friend's decision. She even tried talking to Adaku to see if there was any misunderstanding causing the problem, but Adaku would usually wave her off with a laugh, saying that she was just overthinking things and that they were still the good friends they had always been. Adaku told her she was just stressed out and that was why she acted the way she did sometimes. Adanne, oblivious to the main reason behind Adaku's strange attitude, believed her friend, thinking that Adaku's new job as a cleaner at the market square was probably what was stressing her out, so she didn't bring up the topic again. Meanwhile, Adaku, still burning with jealousy, had been thinking of a plan to snatch Adanne's man from her, but nothing was coming to her mind, so she went to one of her sister-in-laws, the wife of her immediate younger brother, to seek advice. She was the closest to her among all her sister-in-laws, and they discussed very intimate matters. They were like friends. One day, as her sister-in-law Chidimna was sweeping their house, Adaku entered and greeted. "How far, Chidimna? It has been so long." They hugged each other, and her sister-in-law offered her a seat. They began discussing light topics, but somewhere in the middle of their conversation, Adaku started to talk about the main reason for her visit. "Chi," as she fondly called her. "Chi, I have something to tell you." "Go on, I'm all ears," Chidimna replied, staring at her intently. Adaku took a deep breath, and then started. "Chi, you know Afika, right?" Chidimna gave her a thoughtful nod before asking. "The one who sells expensive batik wears at the market square, right?" Adaku nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, that one." Chidimna then replied, "Yes, I know him. Is there a problem?" "He is in a relationship with Adanne," Adaku began, then stopped abruptly to study her sister-in-law's face for any emotions, but Chidimna's expression remained impassive. She then continued, "They are both in a relationship, but I want him for myself. I don't even know what he sees in that idiotic face. He is rich and handsome. I want him, Chi, but I don't actually know how to go about it. Can you help me, Chi?" She finally asked pleadingly. Chidimna, who had been listening to Adaku attentively, just stared at her blankly. After a long, tense silence, she then turned to Adaku and said, "I thought Adanne had removed all the senses from your skull. I honestly didn't know you still had some left. It was high time you asked. I had even noticed that something was going on between those two. Of course, I will help you. With my plan, you will be sure to take Afika away from that wench. After all, you are prettier and more perfect. Show him that you deserve him more than she does. Overtaking is still allowed," Chidimna said, smiling evilly. She herself had snatched Adaku's brother, who she was now married to, from his longtime lover. So coming up with such schemes wasn't new to her at all. "Come closer, Adaku," Chidimna said, beckoning Adaku, who drew close at once. She then started whispering things into Adaku's ear, and slowly, Adaku's face began to glow with an evil smile. "Thank you, Chi, I knew I could always count on you," she said, glowing after Chidimna had finished whispering. "Anytime, dear," Chidimna replied, and with that, they bade each other farewell, and Adaku went home. One afternoon on an Eek market day, Adaku had finished her job for the day and decided to check if Afika was around at his shop, as her workplace was very close to his shop. When she confirmed he was still there, and, better still, alone, she decided it was time to act. She went to a small abandoned storehouse at the back of the market and changed into the seductive clothes she had bought and put in her bag specifically for that agenda. She then covered herself with a long shawl and stopped at Afika's shop, which was enclosed and hidden from the general market. When she entered the shop, she saw Afika offloading a new batch of batik clothes. As if just noticing her, Afika left the clothes he was offloading and then turned to her with a smile. "Good afternoon, Adaku. How are you doing?" Afika asked. "Wow, so you even know me?" "I didn't even know," Adaku replied, feigning surprise, her voice sounding husky and seductive. "Are you not Adaku, Adanne's friend?" he said. "Of course I know you." "Okay," she said, still speaking seductively while touching Afika's shoulders lightly. "I'm done with my work, and I don't want to go home now, as it is still too early. I don't have anything to do now, so maybe I can help you while we get to know each other better," she said, still with a seductive voice. "Don't worry, man. It's okay. I can manage it on my own," Afika said, but Adaku kept on insisting, attempting to touch the batik clothes while her shawl mistakenly slipped off, revealing the seductive clothing she was wearing underneath. Afika began eyeing her curves greedily. She pretended to reach for her shawl to cover herself when a hand stopped her and grabbed her, pinning her to the wall. "Do you know just how beautiful you are, Adaku?" Afika said, his voice laced with lust. Thank you," Adaku replied, feigning innocence. Afika attempted to kiss Adaku, but she stopped him. "Afika, but I thought you were in a relationship with my friend Adanne. You know that this thing is not right," she told Afika, still feigning innocence. Afika stared at her intently for a while, and then said, "I never really loved Adanne. I just wanted to use her as a medium to get to you, seeing that she was the most open and easily accessible one. Knowing how strong the bond you both share is, I knew that if I could access her, she would help open the way for me to you. So enough of this Adanne talk. It was you, and it is still you I want. Adanne was just merely the bait for the bigger fish. Come to think of it, how would I love a girl with a big scar on her face over a fresh maiden like you?" he said as he ran his hands over Adaku's cheeks. "I like you." Adaku was a bit taken aback by his words. Even if she had expected her plan to work out, she didn't expect that Afika, who had been all lovey-dovey with a friend, would say such things about her and their relationship. But soon, her surprise was replaced with pride at Afika's words. She felt elated knowing that the rich trader loved her, not Adanne, and was merely using Adanne to get close to her. "Oh, I see," she replied. "I actually like you too, Afika," she added, smiling. She finally allowed Afika to kiss her, and soon, they were already making out in Afika's shop. When they were done, Afika told Adaku about his house beside the market and invited her to visit him there whenever she needed to see him. She then bade Afika farewell and went home. Adaku kept on visiting Afika at his house from time to time. Afika was also seeing Adanne at the spot where they had first met. One day, Adanne decided to surprise Afika with a plate of egusi soup and pounded yam she had specially prepared for him. It was already evening, so she knew it was too late to take the food to Afika's shop, as it would be highly unlikely that he would be around by that time. Afika had once told her during their conversations that he had a house beside the market square where he usually retired after the day's work, so she decided to take the food there. When she got there, she knocked on the door, but there was no response. Instead, she could only hear muffled sounds that sounded like moans. Bewildered, she decided to open the door to see what was making those sounds, and why no one was answering the door despite the fact that the house wasn't empty. When she opened the door, she was shocked beyond words. She just stood there in shock, unable to move. She didn't believe what her eyes were seeing. She tried so hard to convince herself that it wasn't real that she didn't even notice when the plate and the calabash she was holding fell from her hands, producing a loud, crashing sound. It was Afika, her lover and husband-to-be, in bed with Adaku, in a very questionable position. Adaku and Afika, who had been very distracted by their rendezvous, quickly turned to the door to see what had caused such a loud, crashing sound. They were shocked to see Adanne, standing frozen at the door, staring at them with a broken bowl and a goosey soup spilling out by her feet. Ifika, just realizing the gravity of the situation, pushed Adaku off him and then rushed to Adanne to try to explain things to her. But Adaku just lay where she was, nonchalantly. Adanne then turned her eyes from Ifika to Adaku in disgust. "Oh, so this is what was going on? Why you have been giving me attitude? I should have known. I was such a fool for trusting in our friendship." She then turned to Ifika and said, "There is nothing to explain. I already saw everything I needed to see. I don't have much to say to you. You can continue from where you stopped with her. I'm done with both of you," she said intently, with tears threatening to flow from her cheeks. She was at least expecting her friend to show a little bit of remorse for what she did, but instead, Adaku just said to Ifika, "You heard what she said. We can continue. At least now we don't have to hide it from her anymore. How could you even push me away from you like that because of this hideous creature?" she said to Ifika, completely ignoring Adanne. Adanne, upon hearing her friend's words, ran off in tears, not daring to turn back, while Adaku, on the other hand, just stood up and dragged Ifika, who was deep in thought, back to bed. She was happy that Adanne had finally found out that her lover was with her, so she didn't have to hide anything anymore. She didn't feel any bit of remorse for what she did or how she made her friend feel, and didn't even bother to go and apologize to Adanne. Sometime later, Adanne was still disappointed by the betrayal of her friend and her lover, Ifika, who had even promised to marry her. She had told most of her family members about it, and they were all happy and expectant for the official marriage proposal. She thought of what people would say when they heard why Ifika didn't later propose. She then finally confided in her mother about the entire incident, who encouraged her, telling her that the gods were probably taking Ifika away to bring something better into her life. "My daughter," she said after listening to Adanne's story, "you know, sometimes the gods take away some things from our lives to make way for better things. Who knows, maybe they were just distractions that needed to be cleared out. It happens sometimes," she said as she hugged her crying daughter, consoling her. Months later, Adanne was already doing well for herself. She had long gotten over Adaku, Ifika, and the entire incident. She had become the chief dancer of their village. One day, she and her dancing group were summoned to dance for their king, who was hosting a naming ceremony for his first son. When they were done dancing and were about to leave, she was informed by one of the palace guards that someone seated at the high table was interested in meeting her after the event, and that she would be escorted to the high table after the event to meet the person. She was curious and anxious as to why someone from the seat of affluence would be interested in meeting her, a mere dancer, but she decided to go anyway. When the event came to an end, she was escorted by 2 guards to the high table, and when she looked around to see who was calling her, she only saw one man seated at the high table. He had his legs crossed and was wearing a very expensive-looking batik white dress and sunglasses. When the man noticed her presence, he beckoned her to come closer, offering her a seat. "Good evening, mate. I enjoyed the performance of you and your group. It was very refreshing to watch," the man said, smiling and starting the conversation. "Thank you, sir," she replied politely with a smile. "Without wasting much of your time, let me go straight to the point of why I called you here. I have a series of events which I will be hosting this month, and I will need you and your group to perform at each one of them. I would also need to see you every day to oversee your preparations for each dance presentation. Would you be able to do it? It would be very rewarding." Adanne opened her mouth as if wanting to say something, but then she caught herself and paused thoughtfully. Sure, she needed the money badly, but she also didn't want to get too close to the rich man, especially after her experience with Ifika. After a long, tense silence, she finally turned to the man with a nod of the head. "Yes, sir, I will do it." And with that, the man thanked her and dismissed her, and she went home. Days turned into weeks, and Adanne kept visiting the man every day. It was all strictly business talk until one day the man suddenly said to her after their work, "Maiden, stay behind. I want to have a word with you." Adanne was a little surprised at the sudden request, but she obliged him. "You have never actually told me your name," he said to Adanne. "Well, you've never asked," Adanne replied coyly. He ran his hand down his head and then said to her, "Well, I'm asking you now. What is your name?" "Adanne, but my friends and family members call me Ada for short." "How about yours?" she added after a brief pause. Prince? Adanne was shocked. It was the same prince who had just returned from Germany, the rich trader who was in charge of the entire batik trade between Germany and Nigeria, and she was just talking casually with him. She was utterly surprised but didn't let her face betray her emotions. Okay, Prince. It's nice to finally get to know you. The pleasure is all mine, Ada, he replied, studying Ada's surprised expression with a smirk tugging at his lips. I can now call you Ada as we will be good friends from now, he added, still smirking coyly. Adanne hesitated for a while but then replied, laughing, Okay, Prince, if you say so. Who am I to refuse, my Oga? They then had a little small talk after which Adanne went home. As the days went by, Adanne and Prince's relationship grew stronger. They would discuss trivial things after work, and Prince would occasionally ask Adanne to dance for him. If there was one way to Prince's heart, it was good traditional dance and shaking of the waist, talents which Adanne had at her fingertips. Prince enjoyed every one of Adanne's performances for him, and soon he found himself falling in love with her. One day, after their usual business, and while they were having their friendly discussion, Prince told Adanne about his feelings and declared his intentions to marry her. She was very skeptical about his proposal at first because, after her experience with Afika, she didn't want anything to do with rich men. So she told Prince she needed some time to think it through. She confided in her mother and kept on thinking. Although she had already fallen for Prince, she didn't want to let herself be hurt by another man, especially a very rich one with many admirers. But as the days went by, she kept finding reasons to trust Prince. He continually proved to her that he wasn't like her ex-lover, and even her mother, who was carefully observing him, advised her to marry Prince. After careful consideration, she finally accepted his proposal once she had completed all her work for him. She finished all her tasks, and then she and Prince got married in a grand ceremony that had tongues wagging throughout Umuche's land and made all the maids jealous that their dream man had finally been swept away by Adanne. Adanne even performed a special dance with the dance group on Day. A month after the wedding, Adanne and Prince left Umuche's land for Germany, where Prince resided. Adaku, on the other hand, had been abandoned by Afika with a child. She was also disowned by her parents and thrown out of their house due to the disgrace she had brought upon the family. In Umuche's land, it was a matter of utmost shame for a family if their daughter gave birth outside wedlock, especially if there was no father to claim the child. When she made inquiries, she discovered that Afika was just a traveler who had come to their village to set up his batik business and then return to his land. She also learned that he had a full family, a wife and grown-up children, in a faraway land that no one in Umuche knew about. When the burden of taking care of the child without any support became overwhelming, she remembered her friend Adanne. She recalled how Adanne had sacrificed for her when she was urinating one day, and how the scar on Adanne's face could have been on her own face. She heard that her friend had married the famous batik trader, Afika's boss, and thought that Adanne might be able to help her. She regretted her actions and began crying. Please, Ada, give me one more chance, she said to herself on her way to Adanne's house to ask for forgiveness and help to raise her child. When she arrived at the house, she asked Adanne's mother for Adanne, but her mother chased her out of the compound with a pestle in her hand. She continued, My daughter is not here. She has traveled with her husband to Germany, where they will live. Let me see how you will snatch him there. Get out from here before I smash this pestle on that empty skull of yours, she said, banging the gate angrily on Adaku's face, leaving her to cry and blame herself and her greed for her misfortune. And that, my children, is the end of our story, Matsi Udemba finally said, taking a deep breath as he wrapped up his tale. I'm really glad Adaku got what she deserved in the end, and I'm even happier that she didn't meet Adanne when she went back to ask for forgiveness. She didn't genuinely change. Rather, she was just going back because she needed help. Knowing how emotional her friend was and Adanne's soft spot for her, she knew quite well that her friend couldn't see her in that condition and turn a blind eye to it, despite their differences. Adanne would have probably even accepted her back, and who knows what would have happened next. She could have probably even repeated the same gimmick with Prince. You know, once a snake, always a snake, Ibuka said, shrugging his shoulders defiantly at roughly the same time Matsi Udemba wrapped up his tale. Nice observation, my boy. You've spoken well. Ifani, Matsi Udemba suddenly called, jolting the boy from his deep thoughts. He seemed to have been reflecting on the story he had just heard. Yes, Uncle? What did you learn? Uncle, I learned that we should be mindful of the kind of people and company we keep. Your friends can make or mar you. Like in Attica's case, yes, she was already a bad person, but even as she had bad intentions, she didn't know how to really go about it until she met up with her sister-in-law, Chidimna, who unfortunately was very familiar with such schemes. If she had good company and had met a good person who could give her good and sincere advice, they would have immediately reprimanded and cautioned her. They could have even made her reconsider her sinister thoughts and plans, consequently avoiding the terrible fate that befell her in the end. Unlike, Ifani was still speaking when Matsi Udimba cut him short with a wave of his hand. That's all right, my boy. You've spoken well. How about you, Abuka? What did you learn? Well, Uncle, I learned that we, as people, sometimes never know the value of what we have until we lose it. Attica never valued Adanne, their friendship, or even her sacrifice for her. Following their story, Attica always felt entitled. She always felt like Adanne was at her fingertips, and she could play and use her however she liked. She also believed she deserved better than her best friend, Adanne, mostly because she felt like she was more beautiful and her face wasn't flawed, unlike her friend Adanne, who got a huge scar on her cheek while trying to save her. She never felt bad or remorseful for her treacherous betrayal until her wickedness finally landed her in trouble. Then, everyone, including the snatched man, Ifika, and even her own family, abandoned her in her pregnancy. She then remembered Adanne, her friend who would always stand up and go down for her no matter what. But then it was already too late. Adanne had left her, and the country never to return, while she just stood shamefully outside the gate, shedding crocodile tears. A true case of when she needed her most, she vanished. Ah, nice one, Buka. Good job, my children. You've all spoken well, Matsi Udimba finally said. He wanted to dismiss them, but then his eyes suddenly drifted to Chidimna, who had been raising her hand enthusiastically since he finished his story. Udimna, you learned something too? The old man asked the little girl, surprised. Chidimna wasn't one to always speak up during gatherings like this, given how shy she was. Yes, Uncle, I learned something too, the girl muttered shyly while looking around. I learned that we should not be selfish. We should not be selfish. Was that really part of the morals of this story? I don't think so, but yes, my dear, we should not be selfish.
So don't be selfish. Like this video, pen down your comments, as well as additional moral lessons in the comment box below. Share this video, and most importantly, subscribe to this channel for more African stories with me, Mazi Udemba, and I'll see you in the next video.
Festus! How many times did I call you? You want to kill all of us in this house, right? You will kill all of us, for you have peace.
Obin, please, I want to go inside. I'm very tired now.
You say you are tired? What have you done today that gives you the right to be tired?
As for this house, you are not coming inside today, at least not while I'm still alive.
Go and walk!